It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, guys, welcome back. We're here on our Saturday afternoon. No, you don't have to reboot, guys. We're on our Saturday afternoon American Freedom Radio show that we do on Saturday afternoons, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Just got a hold of Dave Miller, our next guest on Facebook, and he says that when Danny Romero calls him up, it connects, but that Danny can't hear him. But he's there, so maybe Danny can keep trying to call, or maybe Dave Miller can try and call in. I told him to try and call Danny, so we can give that a shot, too. Okay, but in the meantime, I can give you a little update on what's going on with the what do you call it? Dave Miller. Dave Miller's a guy.
Are you there, Ed?
Hey, Dave, you there? Dave?
I am here.
Okay.
Just got in.
All right, great. Finally, we got you. So, Dave Miller, why don't we do this? Okay, because we only have about 24 minutes. So why don't you start off and you tell us about what you're doing down there in Mexico right now?
Right now, I'm doing some planning. I got a group of guys that are coming to Oaxaca, Mexico, in the southern end of the state to work at a ranch where we operate kids camps during the summer. And that ranch is really it's an agricultural training center for people down here in one of the poorest states in Mexico. And we maintain a greenhouse. We have cattle there. We have sheep. We've got rabbits. And all of this is to help local people understand how they can better feed their family, better provide for their family. And in the case of the states, right, it kind of works like this. If you can get food on your plate here in Oaxaca, and you can have a job and you can generate enough money to support your family, you're not leaving home, because this is a great place to live if you can figure out how to take care of the family. And so a lot of our ministry is focused on that, and on helping some of these campesinos, some of the farmers, get a better income, and then also helping their kids dream about future jobs that they can have here in the city. And we help provide those.
And this is called Adventures in Life Ministry, right?
That's right, Adventures in Life Ministry. It's a nonprofit. A couple buddies of mine and I, we founded a little over 20 years ago. And we've been working in Mexico ever since. We started in the border areas in Ensenada, and since expanded into Guadalajara and Oaxaca. But currently most of our ministry is in the southern part of the state, simply because there's just more need here than there is up in the border areas.
So do you need guys to come down right now and volunteer? Like if somebody's listening to you right now, they want to come down and help out. Is that possible?
Dude, if somebody's listening right now and they want to get on a plane, come down on February 6th and give us a week's worth of work, and we'd love you. We can use tradesmen or even just raw labor, guys that can push a wheelbarrow. At this point, we've got a lot of projects we got to get done, because when summer comes, I got 3 straight weeks of camp, and we won't be working on anything then. But especially if there's some of you guys that are sitting up there in an area that's just been covered with snow, and you know what you're doing with a set of tools, bring your bags down, and we'll put you to work for a week, and it'll be good stuff. Trust me.
Now, at church, I guess it was the last week, they showed a video of a town down there that there was a bunch of businesses were burned and cars were burned. It was some kind of violence. Now, what instigated that violence? Was it drugs? Was it political? What was it?
That was in December of 2014, way up in the mountains, about 8 hours from where we work down in the valley. And basically, that was... It was the best way I can explain that is it was kind of Hatfields and the McCoys, and the Tea Party and the most extreme liberals all caught up in one thing, and it got completely out of hand. And some people lost their businesses, people lost their cars. A couple people were killed in that, all in the span of like 3 hours. The town just exploded for 3 hours. But what we were able to do was come in behind that and help put every one of those businesses back online, make sure that every single family there had cars, help repair all of their homes, helped pay medical bills, brought a team of doctors in to help them. All told, this is what you got to understand, right, is that the Mexican government sent about $500 worth of aid to that area. And our ministry was able to raise and deliver between $50,000 and $60,000 of help to the community of people that were affected by this.
Okay, very good. It sounds almost like a Sarah Palin barbecue. The way everything was.
Well,
I turned into a bus stop.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
Okay, now, Dave, we met. We saw each other at church, but we sat down and talked for the first time at our pastor's house. So we're having cookies and coffee the week before Christmas. And you started telling me about this family up in Oregon called the Hammond family. So describe what that story is.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. The Dwight and Steve Hammond are sitting in jail in San Pedro outside of Los Angeles because they lit a backfire on their property that then burned onto federal land in eastern Oregon, and the feds charged them with that they charged them for arson of federal land, but the charges that they used brought a mandatory sentence under a terrorism statute of 5 years. And the judge at the time, he thought that was extreme. He sentenced them to a lesser time in jail. They spent their time in jail, and then the federal government came back and said, that the judge did not have the authority to change that sentence from the mandatory minimum. And so they were ordered back to jail. Those guys go to jail, and then what happens, which we didn't know that night when we were there talking, Ed, then the Bundys kind of took up the cause and went to Burns, Oregon, and took over this little federal kind of visitor center, Naushere Wildlife Refuge. And I guess some of them are still camped there now, about 3 or 4 of them. It's probably pretty lonely. It's pretty lonely in that town anyway. But I can't imagine what the 4 of them are doing out there, because they're not letting them go to Safeway and get food anymore. So I hope they're well stocked.
Yeah, it seems to be that there's a video of one of the guys that's still up there. And this is like the most extreme of the extreme. The guy's screaming he's holding his machine gun, his AR-15, screaming into the camera saying, "Anybody come out and help us. If you see a federal agent, shoot him. If you see a sheriff, shoot him." Now, I got to update you a little bit.
Yeah?
Yeah. Pretty intense, man. I got to update you a little bit since our last show. You and me did a show about this, and the whole thing is, okay, I got Dave Miller, firsthand information. He knows Mary Hammond from the family over there. She works in the ministry. And we talked about what was going on down there. Now, it seems like another radio station heard our show, and they were very upset that they couldn't book a guest to talk on their show. So instead, they did a roundtable talking about stuff from our show, but came out with some really incredibly outlandish theories that they found minerals, that they're trying to take the Hammond's ranch, that they're trying to seize their land. Now, have the Hammond family lost an inch of land?
Well, I don't know that. I mean, that's a long-standing story. Depending on who you talk to, if you talk to some people on the government side, they will tell you that the Hammonds are the worst folks they've ever dealt with. And if you talk to some of the folks on the rancher side, they're going to tell you that the Hammonds are the most upstanding folks that there are. I mean, it's difficult, I think, to get at the extreme kernels of truth. I would just say that there's probably a fair amount of truth on both sides, and there's probably a fair amount of exaggeration on both sides. But you know, this has been there's been a long-standing thing, you know, with the Hammonds and the government, or with the government towards the Hammonds, depending on which way
with poaching
you want to view it.
But with poaching and stuff.
Suffice to say, you know, one of the ironies that some folks were wondering was, you know, were we going to get done with this kind of occupation up there, and the Bundys were going to walk free, and the Hammonds were still going to be in jail,
right?
Which would have been just horrible.
Yeah, just think
because they're not even supporting the Bundys.
Well, just think too, the crime that the Bundys are committing is 10 times worse than the Hammonds, and they're walking out there. They're out on bail. You know, I didn't even think of that.
Well, I don't think they're in. No, they didn't get bail.
Some of them did. I know that guy Pete Santilli got out. He's out on bail.
But Ryan and Ann Bundy didn't get bail.
So they're still in there.
You know, and that's probably the you know, the right thing to do there. Here's going to be the next irony of this, right? Is that all of these guys are going to get convicted of felonies, and then they're not going to be able to own their guns anymore legally.
That's an interesting fact too, yeah, as well. But the point I was trying to make though is a lot of people seem to think that the Hammond family are having their land seized by the federal government. Are they in any threat of losing their land?
Here's what ranchers are in threat of is further shrinkage of their right, you know, perceived right, I guess, to graze their cattle and their livestock on public lands.
Right.
And that's the nut. What happened with the wildlife refuge is it basically it cut the Hammonds' access in half, and so they have to go and petition, you know, to move their cattle from point A to point B across the refuge, and that's always a point of contention. You know, if you don't have contiguous access to your land, then you know you live every year under the constant threat that maybe the feds are going to say no, this year we're not going to do it for you, and then what do?
Gotcha. So now, what are you hearing now about what's going on with the shootout that happened the other night?
Well, you know, I was talking with a friend the other night, and she basically, before anybody had seen the video, she basically you know, described it exactly as the feds are explaining it. And it was interesting. She got down to the end, and she said this. And no matter what side you're on, the majority of people in this area are all conservative. And she said, you know, if you're not going to do anything bad, and if you're not breaking a crime, you don't gun your car at federal agents, and then you don't try to go around the blockade, and then you don't get out and run. She says, you know, if somebody else would have done this, they'd have been shot too. Yeah. I mean, what do you expect? But what she said next was interesting. She said, this is causing families and friends to just split apart out here. These guys don't even know what they've done. They have split our community.
Yeah.
And you know, think about that, because it just kind of lays raw. I mean, even in her own family, she's got family that are ranchers. She's got family that work for the BLM, and you know, they're not allowed to go to work in the local offices. They made them go to offices, you know, 50, 60, 70 miles away. So these people have been driving 60 miles, you know, each way a day to go work in a different office because they wouldn't let them work in Burns. Because of the Bundys, because they're following people home, and they were doing, you know, they were intimidating folks.
What do you know about for the intimidating folks? Now, the fire chief came out, or the retired fire chief came out, and he made a statement. What do you know about that firsthand?
You know, I don't know much on the fire chief, other than I guess that he's only kind of a half. He was only kind of a half a fire chief, but I do know this. I was looking at Cliven Bundy's statement today, and he said something along the lines of folks need to give power and listen to the we the people